This is Euronews Tonight. Here are your top stories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy warns the UN Security Council there will be more scenes like Bucha as he calls for the UN system to be reformed to stop Russia's veto power. From NATO, a warning that Russian forces are shifting their focus to the east and south of Ukraine in the 7th week of the war.
Here in the Cube, we're fact-checking Russia's continued denials about those mass killings of civilians in Bucha.
And the EU unveils a 5th round of sanctions against Russia, this time banning coal imports, but not yet going after lucrative oil and gas. I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has compared Russian forces to terrorists as the details of civilian massacres in the country begin to come to light. He described to the UN Security Council, including Russia's representative, the horrors that he witnessed in the liberated town of Bucha just outside of Kyiv. Zelenskyy accused Moscow of deliberately targeting civilians and warned that the world has yet to see the atrocities committed elsewhere in Ukraine. He also accused the UN of failing to provide global security and demanded major reform.
It is now clear that the goals set in San Francisco in 1945 for the creation of a global security international organization have not been achieved, and it is impossible to achieve them without reforms. Therefore, we must do everything in our power to pass on to the next generation an effective UN with the ability to respond preventively to security challenges and thus guarantee peace, prevent aggression, and force aggressors to peace.
Well, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says that the images from Bucha show an unbearable brutality not seen in Europe for decades. Ahead of Wednesday's foreign ministers' meeting, Stoltenberg called the murder of civilians a war crime and demanded justice be served to those responsible for the atrocities. As Russian forces withdraw from cities in northern Ukraine, the NATO chief again warned that Moscow is refocusing efforts to the east.
In the coming weeks, we expect a further Russian push in the eastern and southern Ukraine to try to take the entire Donbas and to create a land bridge to occupied Crimea.
Well, for more, here with me in the studio is our correspondent, Sasha Vakulina. Sasha, we just heard that warning, that assessment there from Jens Stoltenberg about Russian forces in the east, in the south of the country now. What are you hearing?
Well, what I'm hearing that there are sort of two parallel strategies happening here. At the same time, with these troops withdrawing, relocating towards the east, the attacks and the shelling continues in the rest of Ukraine. And we've heard from Mykolaiv, the mayor, who said that there were bombardments non-stop in Mykolaiv overnight. As well, he claims, now this claim is not confirmed and there was no comments on it from Moscow, that in Mykolaiv, Russian forces used cluster munition. He now has asked women and children to leave Mykolaiv to avoid civilian losses. This is the situation that's been happening towards the south and also western part of Ukraine. And then there are the troops that Jens Stoltenberg said that Russia claimed it would withdraw. These are the troops that were around Kyiv and Chernihiv, north of the country. Indeed, some of those troops are being relocated and redeployed to the east. This actually confirms Moscow claims with late March that would refocus on the quote, the complete liberation of the Donbas. Donbas, these are two regions, Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And on that territory, there are Donetsk and Luhansk, self-proclaimed Russia-backed separatist republics, right? Now, we've heard as well from the Institute for the Study of War, they went into a little bit more details, and they say when it comes to the east, and those troops now focusing there in the east, Slovyansk is the place that Russians must take as the minimum step. Now, over the past 24 hours, Russian forces did from zero to very minimal progress there. The way they advanced, they did not. So now the analysts say that if they try to do that, it would be significant for them to take at least Slovyansk.
So reinforced efforts there, but also nowhere essentially really being safe in the country right now from what you're saying. We've also been listening to, of course, President Zelenskyy in that powerful address to the UN Security Council, doing so in front of the Russian representative. Of course, Russia has veto power. What was the reaction to what President Zelenskyy had to say?
Well, that was this veto power was exactly the phrase, right, that got all the reactions. Zelenskyy said that we are dealing with a state that is turning the veto into the UN Security Council into the right to die. And that was the phrase, that was the quote by Ukraine's president that got the attention. Well, you've heard from the US, they have reiterated their calls for Russia to be suspended from the Security Council now because of that power. There was the same reaction from the US ambassador to the UN. There was the reaction of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who also said that he cannot and probably will never be able to forget the pictures that he saw from Bucha, and it's this Russia veto power that is now on the agenda.
Absolutely. Sasha Vakulina, as ever, thanks a lot. Well, Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vasily Nebensia, continues to deny that Russian troops were responsible for the killings in Bucha, calling the videos of dead bodies fake and blaming the atrocities on Ukrainian nationalists. He presented what he said were witness testimonies depicting Ukrainian troops as the perpetrators of war crimes.
There are Russians and Ukrainians tortured to death with swastikas burned into their chests. There are looters and criminals who you distributed weapons to. There are civilians and foreigners who are held hostages. And in spite of all factual evidence and common sense, you're trying to lay the blame for their death on the Russian military. This is absolutely unacceptable. And the fact that you even consider that Russian military would be capable of this.
Well, let's go straight over now to our correspondent, Galina Polanskaya, who's standing by for us in Paris. Galina, the Russian envoy to the UN, of course, addressing the Council, many quotes, but he said that Ukraine was responsible for the conflict in the East. He said that Nazis were, quote, running the show in the country. Talk us through his address.
Hello, Helena. Well, exactly. The main message is that all the accusations against Russia's military are groundless. Mr. Nebensia said that Russian forces do not hit civilian targets or harm civilians, and that's why, as he explained, Russia does not move forward in Ukraine as many would have expected. He said that the accusations of Ukraine are groundless because there were, according to him, video proofs that once Russian forces left, the streets were empty. He also spoke about the conditions of the bodies and gave some details about how the timing did not correspond. So globally, he addressed directly to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and said that all of those accusations would be on his conscience, and said that this fake attack on Russia has one goal: to discredit and dehumanize the Russian army and to level political pressure on Russia. That's what the Russia's UN representative Vasily Nebensia has just said at the UN Security Council.
And prior to his comments, Galina, we heard from President Zelenskyy. He essentially called for Russia to be kicked out due to its veto power. And if we look at actions in the past, even in February, Russia actually used its veto against a resolution condemning the invasion. But who could support Russia again in the chamber if we were to see a similar resolution?
Yes, exactly. Volodymyr Zelenskyy today asked where is the security that this council should guarantee, and he urged for reforms and spoke about this veto that was, of course, one of the quotes which we could see everywhere in the Twitter right now. And Russia used its right of veto in February, and that's why the UN Security Council could not stop its invasion in Ukraine. We remember that 11 members voted for, but 3 abstained, and it was China, India, and United Arab Emirates. We also know that Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov just was in China and India with a visit, and we've heard a lot about mutual ties and the cooperation. And he also mentioned that what was important is that all of those countries were in the UN Security Council, so we could expect pretty much the same scenario. And we know that UN Chief Antonio Guterres told that what is happening in Ukraine is one of the greatest challenges to the international order.
All right, Galina Polanskaya in Paris. Galina, good to talk to you. Thanks for your insights. Russia has continued to claim that these scenes of mass killings and devastation in Bucha have been staged, but mounting satellite images and witness testimony is rebutting those claims and denials. Let's find out more from Matthew now in the Cube.
Well, Helena, those Russian denials about those claims have now been labelled by Twitter, a social media platform saying that Moscow had violated its rules about abusive behaviour, but they would not be removing the tweets due to public interest. Well, here in the Cube, we have been fact-checking a number of misleading claims that have been made about Bucha in recent days by Russian officials, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and as you just heard there, at the United Nations Security Council. Now, the first of these claims is that the alleged victims in the town of Bucha were staged, supposedly after Russian forces had left the town. This claim, Sergei Lavrov said, was just another hoax. But however, satellite images from 2 weeks before Russian forces left the town do show what appears to be civilian victims lying on the street. These images, produced by Maxar from the 19th of March and first reported by the New York Times, are a direct contradiction of Russia's claims. And there is mounting evidence, drone footage and satellite images just like this. Now, Russia had also claimed, a number of embassies had claimed that in some of the videos of victims in Bucha, you could see bodies moving, claiming that they were so-called crisis actors, people who are apparently hired to play the role of war victims. Claims like this have been spread by pro-Russian accounts since the start of the invasion, but again, they are false. They have been debunked numerous times by independent fact-checkers. And what's more, here at Euronews, we analysed the videos of those victims in Bucha and compared them to photos taken by Agence France-Presse on April the 2nd. The location and the positioning of those victims have not changed. This is further evidence that the victims in that town were not crisis actors. We've seen numerous examples as well of testimonies being provided to Euronews, other broadcasters, independent NGOs, as well as international organisations. Many people alleging that war crimes had been committed by Russian soldiers against Ukrainian civilians. Helena, Russia is continuing to deny these allegations and falsely claim that those images from Bucha have been staged. But clearly, international and independent evidence against Moscow is mounting.
All right, Matthew, well, it's cases like this that just show verification has never been more important. Thank you so much. The EU has announced another round of sanctions against Russia in reaction to what has been seen from Bucha. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says that the perpetrators of the heinous crimes committed must not go unpunished. Brussels says that the sanctions will be broader and cut deeper into the Russian economy. However, oil is still not included among the sectors hit. But for the first time, Russia's energy exports to the bloc will be sanctioned.
Today, more than 40 countries apply sanctions like these. To take a clear stand is not only crucial for us in Europe, but also for the rest of the world. A clear stand against Putin's war of choice. A clear stand against the massacre of civilians. And a clear stand against the violation of the fundamental principles of the world order. Slava Ukraine.
Well, in Strasbourg for us, our correspondent Shona Murray joins us and we can speak to her now. Shona, a fifth round of sanctions announced from the EU going after Russian coal, crucially, but not oil.
No, that's right. Ursula von der Leyen did say, though, that oil was up for discussion. They mentioned wider sanctions, as you mentioned there, coal, certain sectoral sanctions, transport, and other areas like shipping and so on, and also 19 Russian diplomats expelled from the EU's permanent representation. But there will be a conversation about oil and down the line gas. But I'm joined now by Rio Teres, an Estonian MEP. Rio, you're of the opinion that we really need to just go with oil and gas right now to stop this war?
Well, all sanctions are important, but for my taste, it's too little, too late. We need to really start to do real sanctions on the energy, and that means oil and gas, because coal is just 5% of the revenues of Russia, and the main operation in war in Crimea is financed by the gas and oil money.
Rio, you're a general in the Estonian military, and you said to me earlier something very chilling, that we haven't seen anything yet, even though we've witnessed the atrocities in Bucha. Talk us through what you think is next.
Yeah, well, I think the withdrawal from north of Ukraine is very painful for Russia, but they have learned their lessons, and now they are concentrating their effort in one offensive axe, and they will try to take city by city with a mass of weapons, mass of soldiers, and as long as Ukraine can stay for it, it is good, but there will be always more Russian weapons and more Russian troops coming. And if they now really concentrate on, say, Kharkov, Kramatorsk, wherever, then it will really be a Second World War type large-scale offensive with very many casualties.
You said also that you believe that this is a genocide ideology coming from the Kremlin.
It has been always the case throughout, well, centuries, if you want. The burned down all the villages, and they leave nobody alive if they leave. And the Ukrainians understand that. So for them, they are fighting for their existence. And Russia's official media has announced that Ukraine is not a nation, and so every Ukrainian-speaking person needs to be liquidated.
You mentioned that we're going to be in a World War II situation. That's something that NATO said it wants to avoid. The reason why you don't have NATO supporting Ukraine directly is that you'd have a military confrontation with Russia, a direct one. They want to contain it. What do you make of that position?
I think it's a weak position, and I think NATO's nations need to understand that the war is not about Ukraine. The war is in Ukraine about the Western value. Russia is fighting war against NATO, against US. And we need to recognize it. If we don't, we will lose this confrontation.
So what do you think literally should happen now? Do you think that NATO countries need to support?
NATO's countries need to at least start to deliver serious offensive weapons, main battle tanks, airplanes to Ukrainians, to give them the possibility to fight back this huge army which they are facing in the east.
Okay, Riho Terres, thank you very much for joining us. And back to you in studio, Helena.
Shona Murray there with that sobering assessment. Shona, thank you. Well, there were hopes of a resolution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine following last week's peace talks in Turkey, but in light of the revelations of atrocities in Bucha, President Zelenskyy said that further sit-downs would be a challenge. Now, Ukrainian MP Rustem Umerov is part of Kyiv's negotiating team, and he spoke to me earlier about what Ukraine's demands are.
There will be no compromise on territorial integrity. We want our partners to know that internationally recognized borders is a red line to us. Nevertheless, we're willing to hear any possible solutions that will not jeopardize our territorial integrity, our independence and dignity. So in this stage, we're talking not about compromises, but about the security, because Ukraine needs a security and guarantees from the international partners. We're working closely with the US, European partners, and that is why after they will provide their guarantees, we will continue our talks. Why? Because there is no way that we will be believing to what Russian Federation will offer. Only with international partners and collective security measures, we will continue.
So what would those security guarantees actually look like, and what are their chances realistically, do you think, for success?
What we see that international security guarantees didn't work. Ukraine signed bilateral, multilateral, regional, international guarantees, and when the war erupted, we were not somehow secured ourselves. And that is why we will need to architecturize a new model for the security guarantees, where all parties that will be signing this agreement either will provide weapons, either they will be getting on the site with us, or will close the skies. It is just simple items that I'm able to inform, but at the end of the day, if we will not feel comfortable with these security guarantees, we will not go further.
Now, I understand that when you were in Istanbul, you and Roman Abramovich were affected by a health scare, which at the time was a suspected poisoning. So tell us what happened to you, your personal account in those moments, and if you have a clear idea now of what happened.
The work of the experts is still going on.
Europe's top football teams are getting ready for the start of the quarter-finals of the Champions League, and Richard Cady brings us more.
It's a busy week of Champions League football, with the first legs of the quarter-finals getting underway tonight. Benfica, seen here training, host in-form Liverpool in Lisbon. Having failed to progress past this stage of the competition since 1990, they will be hoping that their defensive style of play will stifle Liverpool's attacking game.
They're a good team and play in a similar way to Ajax. But we were able to play 2 good games against them and beat them. Our ambition is to play the same way in these next 2 games against Liverpool, who we know are a very tough opponent.
Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool will be full of confidence and are currently placed second in the Premier League. And in Mo Salah, they possess one of the best centre-forwards in world football. In the second of tonight's quarter-finals, Pep Guardiola's Manchester City host Atletico Madrid, who dispatched Manchester rivals United in the last round. Diego Simeone's team will hope to frustrate a free-flowing City side who put 5 goals past Sporting Lisbon in the previous round of the competition. Richard Cady, Euronews.